All right, we're going to call this regular meeting of the City Council July 13th to order. We're going to start with roll call down there on our way down.
Brendan Tiedemann, Ward 2. Travis Schurz, Ward 1.
Tracy Peterson, Mayor. Gary Sauls, Ward 2.
Aaron Center, Ward 1.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Approval of agenda. I need a first and a second.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Do we need to amend it? We need to amend it. Amend. What are we amending?
We need to add an item after executive session, as far as proposal for the finance officer position.
For hiring, to
Yes.
offer for the finance position? Okay. So we need to amend the agenda to, when we get out of executive session, to offer a position or offer someone the position of finance officer. Is that right? Okay. All right. So then I do need approval for the updated agenda.
I make a motion to approve his amendment and the updated agenda.
And a
second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. I need a first and a second for the approval of minutes. Our special meeting minutes are not on here. We'll probably try to do those when we do our public meeting on the 27th.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. And a second, or do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Visitors to be heard. Anyone? Please come up to the podium, state your name and your address, please.
I'm John Sindig. I live at 902 4th Street, the unpaved 4th Street, I might add. I had a couple of things I just wanted to bring up. And the first one is, first of all, I greatly appreciate you publishing, at least I saw it on Facebook, the proposed agenda for tonight's topic. So it alerts us as John Q citizens to evaluate whether there's value in us attending the meeting, if it's something we have particular interest in, and that's why I'm here. I would also encourage you to continue that by posting the minutes of the meeting. And as soon as you can get your website fixed, that would be even better.
Yeah, we're working on it.
And you have a time frame when that's going to be resolved?
It's in creation, so it depends on how long it takes us to get our information that we want, how we want it to present it, and all of our links correct working. We're hoping 14 days at the most.
And it's in creation, so who's creating?
The same company that we are currently using has done a lot of changes, and the platform we currently use no longer exists. So we pulled our information down, saved what we wanted to, and now we're putting up new information and all of our existing links, hopefully new links as well.
Okay.
So we're using the best of what we have to utilize and add more features on the new one.
So
So
Okay.
it's the same company.
we're updating it
Updating.
because it's integrated, extremely good.
Is that something that we would have access to as the public and provide vehicles of input via that?
Yes, that will allow you to have the report. There's a reporting system that you can have, and there's also an interactive calendar that we're working on. So that way, when you look at our calendar and click the next council meeting, it'll show you the agenda when you click on the calendar date. So it should be more user-friendly.
Okay, good. Also, please consider sooner than later making available the previous recorded Zoom meetings and all current and future Zoom meetings so that we have access as a public to those for review. The second thing I wanted to just mention, it caught my eye as I was driving by the last couple of days. And thank goodness we got some rain. That's the good news.
Yes.
But the bad news, it looks like most of it ended up in Murphy's Pond.
Yeah, we gotta put a silt pond, a silt fence up yet.
Yeah, so didn't you just spend a bunch of money to have that? So what's gonna happen?
I'm not, I know we have to put a silt fence up. Do we drain it to make it look better? You tell me.
No, what are you gonna do with all the silt that was dredged, that you just dredged out?
Because we just dredged out.
And as a result of the expansion is what caused that? Are they gonna be reimbursing you for the expense to take that
We
out?
will certainly reach out to them to have that discussion.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Deb Paulson, 416 Lovely Avenue. I have a paved highway. No questions on that. Just wanting to say I do appreciate Dan and his getting back to me and the amount of tree trimming that we were able to complete up at the park, and the fact that we are in the works to plan to complete the rest of it. It looks a lot better. I'm very happy with that and interacting with Dan on that. Just want to remind you, you did have a concerned citizen not too long ago who came here about weeds in the playground. They need to be addressed. They are there, and there'll be stickers before long, okay? The other thing I have is a question about a question.
A question about a question. Okay.
Yeah, rolled up in an enigma.
Got it. Okay.
So when a tax-paying citizen comes to this public meeting and asks a question that cannot be answered by this board during that meeting, how long should they reasonably expect to wait before they get an answer back from this board? What is your perception of what is reasonable?
Normally, I would say not that long, but because we have a finance officer, because we have no finance officer at the moment, things are delayed a lot more than we ever have wanted them to be, or have they ever been. Usually what happens is we discuss that question, whatever question it might be, we discuss it, let the finance officer know how we want to have that conversation, and they will call you, since we all work full-time jobs, so they have that conversation and get your information. So since we don't have a finance officer yet, it's taken a little bit longer. We will hope to get a lot better and faster at that when we hire them.
So once we have a new finance officer in training, what should my expectation be for getting a response?
I would answer that greatly depends on the question.
Okay.
Uh,
My question was, how many kids are involved in the Y Summer Rec program? Now, Becca, referred that, Dan came to me before this meeting to give me a number of 17. That answer is incomplete. My request was, since you said we don't know because that number changes week by week, which is understandable because of how it's set up and the cost related to it. My question was then, okay, week by week, how many kids have you got? So getting an answer of 17 is not a sufficient nor a complete answer. I am very interested in knowing how this program does this year, because we have had in the past what I consider to be a very successful summer rec program. And we have in place this year a program that is perceived by many to be cost prohibitive to a number of our families.
And I can answer that. It probably does look cost prohibitive, but not a one family reached out for assistance to us or the Y, because there is assistance there. And that was noted to everyone in their flyer. So there was assistance there if they thought it was too expensive. So I understand that. But the other reason we had to go this route is for us to feasibly, financially have the summer rec program like it used to be. We would have had to have 2, possibly 3 buses because of COVID restrictions and all of those things, and how they want us to deal with that being statewide and how they want us to do that. And we would have had to add at least 2, if not 3 more people to be a counselor, I guess that's what we call them, and possibly another manager. So in the grand scheme of things, it would have been almost triple the expense to have a summer rec program this year based on COVID things.
I find that interesting, Tracy, you know, and I tend to think Baltic has more than one bus.
We
And I
do,
know we have sent more than one bus for summer rec.
not
before.
disagreeing, but it's expensive to
And
send
I know
more than
that
one.
we have had to cap the number of kids that we would allow in. And I am just asking that when decisions are made for the future of this project, that be a consideration. Maybe capping at what we could do with 1 or 2 buses and 2 counselors instead of 3 would have been a better way to serve the young people in our community than putting out this program and telling people at the forefront that there are no scholarships, because that was the word on the streets.
It was in the paper that it was on the physical paper that they got from the school that there were scholarships available.
And I did not see that.
No, because you didn't have one in
I
the
have
school.
no kid,
Right,
but I do have an interest in the youth in this community. So I want us to make good decisions regarding that program going forward. I want it to be inclusive instead of exclusive. Thank you. And I'll look forward to that week by week information.
Just 2 quick thoughts on that
Yes.
too. The cap in your limit is kind of a double-edged sword too, because then you're gonna have people that are mad that they didn't get in on it. And then you're not letting people get in on if we did it the old way. The new way, we're just as excited to see what the results are as you are, because this is something new. We're trying to find the best way to have summer rec that's cost effective, inclusive, productive. This is just one means. The old way wasn't really that terribly feasible. This was one way we found as an alternative to find results. Might say, you know, this is an epic failure, back to the drawing board. Hopefully next year is easier and we have less COVID restrictions where we can find something else to do.
And Travis, I appreciate that. I will tell you the 2 occasions that I have seen the summer rec group, there were 5 kids and 7 kids. That is a drastic reduction from the successful program we've run in the past. There's my challenge for you.
anyone else? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. No one else? I just have, being that we're on the road, just a question of my own that I was thinking about. There's many people in the public watering their lawns, myself included. I should say that. We have a 4-month span in the month of it'd be June, July, no, it's May, June, July, and August that we pay our sewer rate based on the 4 months prior, the average of your sewer rate, you pay that. And the thought process is that since you're watering your lawn, it's not going into the sewer system, so you shouldn't have to pay as high a sewer rate because it's going on your lawn. It's been in place for I should know that answer, I don't, quite a while, so it's been a little while.
For a while.
We are very, it's rare to find, for the town to see that. My question is, you know, being that it's saving money, as far as I would be curious, is if anyone would be interested in not using the, I don't think very many people are watering their lawns in the month of May. I would think September would be more beneficial to people to save that money than it would be in May. So I was wondering if anyone had any input, if they're just hearing about this, if they didn't know that's in place.
I thought we rescinded that already, and that's why our water bills went up. But I will tell you, most of your new lawns will be started in the spring as opposed to in the fall. So if you
But-
change it from May to September,
Which is.
it's going to hurt the people that are starting new lawns. It's also, like for me, I don't water grass.
Okay.
But I water a vegetable garden, and that is bad.
Okay, no, and that's, I don't have a garden, that's why I'm asking, I guess. Like, probably not using a ton of gallons for your, right now we pay $8.01 per one, is that right? $8.01 per 1,000 gallons is our water rate right now. 851, excuse me.
Per thousand.
I'm assuming the garden probably isn't taking too much, I guess it depends on the size of your garden, too, right? It was just merely a question, if I'm the only one that's thought about it, I guess it doesn't need to take too much thought, I was just wondering.
I picked my first Canadian drink.
And it's a
Canadian squash line.
Do you water, I mean, would you see that more beneficial in May?
I just
than
put
September?
sod in like 2 weeks ago,
Sure,
but I had a container garden and I've been watering them intermittently
sure,
for a couple of weeks now, so it wasn't, I'm not probably a good example
Sure.
of the well-developed
and I don't think it's gonna,
feeding frenzy she creates in her backyard.
sure, I don't think it's gonna impact too many, I'm looking at it as lately, for me, it seemed like probably the last 3 years, most people aren't turning their sprinkler systems on until late May.
So
So I
Brandon,
will-
can I ask a question, because I didn't really fully understand what you just explained.
Okay.
So we are, what you said is whatever we use for 4 months, is that rate is then billed for the next 4 months? Is that
No,
what's
I'm sorry, I should explain it better. So in January, February, March, and April, your sewer usage determines, based on an average of those 4 months, determines your sewer bill or rate for those following 4 months in the months of June, July, May, June, July, and August.
So it's like a prorate.
It's a pro, exactly, because people are gonna be using a lot more water that it's not going into our lagoons, it's going elsewhere. And therefore, it's not going into the sewer system, and then you should pay a less sewer rate. It was the cost.
So doesn't that even out through the course of the year though? So when you're using more in the summer months and you're watering, then you end up paying for that in the fall, and then when it goes back down again, you pay for that in the winter, and then.
Well, that's why I was,
Is it a cyclical thing where it all evens out at the end of the year anyway?
I
The
don't know.
idea is to help the citizens, because your water usage is high for average of 4 months out of the year. And so what affects your water usage affects your sewer amount. So if your water bill is higher, they're giving you a break on the sewer, so that's where it's actually evening out your bill, you would say. It's not.
Yeah, again,
On your average of your first 4 months essentially.
and I would think it'd only be fair that, if you are watering in May, just being the city that month would take over, as part of your average, is kind of how I was thinking, because.
Well, maybe I'm
Unfortunately,
confusing
still
water
not.
rate with sewer rate.
Yes.
So
So
you're,
I
yeah.
think that's my.
Oh, did you not, I'm sorry, I should have also explained that.
Because I don't flush my toilet near as much as I water my lawn.
The drop in the
Exactly.
sewer rate.
Right, and they don't, and we don't wanna
That's
charge
what it
you that price for sewer
And
as water, because like you said,
So
you're
whatever
watering.
you use for water determines your sewer rate and that's.
Exactly,
Yes.
right, yes, almost every other time.
And especially like, in the winter time, your water is going into your sewer.
So do you have,
All
do you
year
have
long,
sewer
but-
rate? It's very
He's talking
simple.
about
How does
summer.
how does that even out that I don't understand?
No, it doesn't even up. What it is that, if you use 1,000 gallons of water, you're paying for your water plus the sewer for that 1,000 gallons, okay? So January, February, March, April, you use 1,000 gallons a month, let's say, okay? So then they take that average, and so that would mean that you use about 1,000 gallons every single month. So come May, June, July, and August, your sewer rate is only based on that 1,000. But if you use 2,000, you're not getting a sewer charge on that extra 1,000.
So
Does that make sense? Because you're
So
not,
what you're trying to do is release the sewer rate?
he is saying,
I'm
extend it to or get rid of May and extend it to September.
so right now, it's those 4 months,
So,
the 4 months that we
changing
have
4
them in
months.
place, yes, are May, June, July, and August. I feel like a lot of people are still watering in September versus watering in May, so I'm wondering, is it more beneficial? Yeah. it's-
Or basically change the quarters. is what-
Yeah,
change the-
exactly, just to
right,
move from
okay.
May to, yes.
Okay.
In relation to talking about establishing lawns and bay and things like that, I know in Sioux Falls, when they have water restrictions, you apply for like a new draft permit, they'll issue you a permit for water outside of restricted periods. Is it too complicated or too much math or too much to go, we'll shift it from June to September? But if you're putting a new lawn in, you can apply specific case use for, I just put
You
sod
can,
in.
you can apply
It's a
a
really
month
good
You can
question.
apply for the.
for the
May
extra month.
I don't know if that's too
Well, I
complicated.
wouldn't say an extra month to move it from May to September, so you're still only getting your 4 months, but you can adjust. It's a very good question, I just wonder if it's feasible.
Yeah, the difference I would be saying is, okay, if I put a lawn in the spring, and I apply for that, I would get 5 months instead of 4, not to shift it back, but to
Right.
just.
Yeah, and I think
Because you're establishing a yard, 5 months would be better on.
So what would be his projected savings if we won that a month? I mean, when you're doing the math on an average citizen, I mean, what are we talking?
Depends how much, I mean, whoever waters.
I would,
So it's
I
like.
don't know, it's gonna depend on the year, if it warms up a lot earlier in the year, you know, it's, again, I hate to just get drastic, but I actually coincidentally, many years ago, not under, 10 years ago, I worked in irrigation, and I would say around that mid-May, depending on when you're getting there, around that time you're turning the systems on. That's why I just have it on my own yard and interested in it, like to have a green lawn. But I was just curious on if everyone else has thought about, you know, because I got my bill last year in September, and I thought to myself, I was like, dang, I still water a lot in September, and my bill, I'm not gonna change it, I paid probably a $300 to $400 water bill. Versus, I would tell you, even now I'm paying like $280, my last month was about $280. So I would tell you, yeah, I mean, $100 depending on the year, I would say. I mean, but you're not talking about too many people that watering their lawns. It's more of an inquiry on my own. You know, not looking to.
Maybe Brad, what we're paid to do is once the website's up and running, or maybe on Facebook, you can kind of explain this and see what kind of feedback we get from people, because it's really difficult. But, you know, I think more feedback is probably more, I think it's a great question. I think it's a really good
I don't think a lot of people know what's even in place,
I
to
think
be
you're
quite
right.
honest with you.
But for the people that don't water their lawn, it's not gonna matter anyways, because your water usage is still the same, so as long as it stays flat line, then probably have no idea, it's really only benefits the people that water.
Correct.
I don't water my lawn at all, I'm getting the same discount as everyone else, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the people that do water their lawn, otherwise.
Luscious garden, terrible lawn.
I mean, it's just an inquiry.
Choose your battles.
I appreciate the feedback.
Can I ask a question before we leave the topic of the water bill?
Yep.
What is the beacon charge for?
The beacon charge is for the tower that gathers all of the meter readings in the town. So that sends a signal from your house to the beacon that comes into the water billing software. And that, I believe, comes off on your next bill, because it was a 1-year charge.
That was going to be my question,
Yep.
because I thought it was a 1-year charge that started June of 20 and it's still on my bill this month.
Well, this month's
So
bill was
I'll-
actually May's billing period, so the next one will be June's, and I'm looking to see if it comes off on the next bill or the following, because it depends on when it was put into place.
I
But it
hope you're
should
right,
be.
it's off on the next one. $2 is $2.
Yep.
So I have a question about that, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No, go ahead.
There was another line item, and I don't, because it's abbreviated, it's truncated, when you're looking at your water bill, you don't always know what it stands
Yep.
for. And I think there was something that said summer RE.
Summer SE, that's your summer.
That's
sewer.
summer sewer rate.
Thank you, because that's exactly what you guys,
That-
yep, and I'm an election.
That's the summer sewer rate.
That's the discount that Brenda's talking about.
Okay, thank you. And so I don't know if there's a way to do that, where that stuff doesn't get truncated, so you can understand it. Yeah, I don't know how it's a tricky gig.
We could probably put something on the webpage or.
Yeah, you could do a
Facebook
cheat
or-
code, so like you can say, hey, if you want to put a cheat code on our website. Yeah, like how
And
you
that-
read your water bill, so
Yep.
people know.
Sure.
Cool.
For the sake of the rest of this year, do we have any analytics quizzes up here that can take a look at those water rates and see what sort of savings? I mean, I know the data's there, it's just analyzing it to go, how much money are we saving or losing by shifting that period? You know, maybe the shift would.
Well,
save
and
all
it's
the
based
money.
on person by person, it's not a
Yeah,
whole
it's-
town.
Yeah, so
It's
the, it's not,
No, I get it, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking you can average all that out and get some general trends going.
I'm hard to answer based on numbers.
Based on numbers, sure.
I got a finance officer in here.
Yeah.
We'll ask her.
I got some analytics.
Just do a comparison between May and
Yep.
yeah,
I don't have to look at the whole year. 3 months and.
I just be close into it just to see. Yeah,
Give us
just
an
more
snapshot
curiosity.
going on.
I think people would be very interested to know that that's how they're getting the.
Even if you just, I'm sorry, even if you just do a sample and pick, say, 20 or 25 customers and look at their May and then look at their September and compare, you'll have your
But
answer.
don't use that. Don't use it.
You can use me all you want, I'm not gonna water a lawn, but I do water flowers and I do water my vegetables.
Okay. Anyone else? If not, okay, we'll move on to old business, and since we don't have any, we're on to new business. New business, swearing in of the newly elected officers. I believe that is you here.
You're all gonna stand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Officers, Carrie, Tracy.
Yes.
Aaron's already been
Hold on.
Aaron already been sworn in.
So raise your right hand. I state your name,
I, Tracy,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
and affirm
and affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of South Dakota,
and the Constitution of the State of South Dakota,
and that I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
discharge the duties of whatever your position is
discharge the duties of mayor
Discharge the duties of hard too. Separate.
for the city of Baltic,
For the city of Baltic,
Minnehaha County,
Minnehaha County,
South Dakota,
South Dakota,
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
All right, consideration of extending a campground stay. Do you want to tell us about this?
Mr. Miles.
Yep,
I knew I should have called the city. Come up there.
yep.
Yes,
Podium,
to the podium, please.
All right, I'm Miles, City Maintenance. So I had a gentleman approach me about a month and a half ago. He is a safety coordinator and inspector for a building project relating to a couple of bakeries in the immediate area of town. There's one just to the west of town, there's one in Jasper, I think it is. Aaron, you know a couple of them too.
They're all over.
Yeah.
Right. So what they're doing is they're putting in a digester, and it's like a gas capturing to put it in the natural gas pipeline. So himself and a few other workers, they're based out of Oklahoma and Missouri and Mississippi. So they're working in the area, and they've been working here since, I believe, like February. And currently, most of them are camping. They live out of their campers and they're on the road. Most of them are currently having to stay in Sioux City and driving back and forth every day. So he has approached me and asked about if we knew anybody who had a campground that would be available. So I reached out to a few people, and nobody really had anything available for an extended time. They're looking to be here until at least the first of the year, possibly into February, depending on how the project goes. There's 6 of them total.
6 campers.
There's 6 campers. There's the gentleman who approached me, and there's 5 others that are working with him. He's mainly focused on getting one for himself, just so he's not having to drive.
Right
But
now,
he said if we can help others at some point, they would not have to drive that far either. I told him that, I mentioned that we don't have sewer and water hookups, and he checked with his company. They're willing to pay for a septic truck to come out and deal with their campers on site, and they're willing to have a water truck come out and haul them fresh drinking water, whatever they need every day, maybe once a week, whatever they need. They're just trying to avoid having to drive 3 hours, 4 hours back and forth every day with how long they're going to be here. So I told them I would bring it up and mention it to you guys. I think it would be a great way for the city to earn some great income from the campground. When I asked him about a price, he said he was willing to pay, he said he could do $600 a month per camper if we could get him a spot for that long. So if we had a camper in a campsite down there, it's $15 a night. So if we had a camper in a campsite for every day of the month, it'd be $450. And I don't think we've ever had a camper that I've only been here for a couple months. But yeah, so it's only a couple days a week. So if that's an easy sort of income that's out of sight, out of mind. The guy, I guess my thoughts on it, I'm all for it because he's a safety inspector, he's an ocean inspector, so the guy gets paid to go around and tell people to be smart, be safe. So I don't think we really got to worry about being a wild lunch or anything like that.
How many camping spots do we have?
We have 20.
20.
There's 21, but one of them's city use only, so.
And what is currently rented of those through the renting season?
there's nothing, there's 2 spots available that don't have any reservations on them at all. I put my name down on them from now until the end of the season, because I knew this was coming. So I put my name on them.
On 6?
On 2.
On 2.
There was
Just
only
on
2 of
I'm
them that
sorry.
were available from the day I talked to Becca about it until the end of the camping season. So I asked her to put my name on it just to at least hold those 2, so that they'd have at least 2 if you guys were okay with it. So he's asked me about it more than once. I mentioned it to him. I tried to get a hold of him again this week, but I brought it up to him, and Becca had a good point about signing like a liability form, or, a waiver of damage, and he didn't seem to have a problem with it. And if his company,
Considering it's through January, the snow removal is gonna have to be done, do we just?
Yeah, we usually lock that up and don't touch that.
so my thoughts, they all, and I kind of mentioned that to him, like, they all drive brand new 4-wheel drive pickups. And he even said, he's like, if you guys don't make it down here, plow, we'll get home, one way or another. But all we would have to do, especially if we can get them all grouped together in the middle, it's one pass in, make a loop around and come back out. So it'd be an extra 10 minutes on our snow plowing. It's a gravel road, so we don't have to worry about salt. We're not gonna lose any money on salt.
You said through January?
Their plan is to be here through January. And he, if it doesn't work out, if it gets too cold, if they can't do it, because he's got his camper set up to be used through the winter. I don't know how, or whatever. But he said he's camped up in North Dakota all through the winter with it, so he's not concerned about that. But
Is there an issue on the legal
I
side
think
of
of
things?
one, because if you have people living in the park, then you're not gonna be able to close the park. And if there's people in there all the time, the gate will have to be open all the time, which means we have to be publicly available all of the time. And so I don't know how that affects any insurances or liabilities.
That's what I'm asking, that's why I'm asking. I don't know if it does or if it doesn't. We have to look into that.
gonna change
It's not gonna change our insurance or anything like that. It's just,
Yeah,
yeah, we just close it because
close it for your convenience.
for our convenience necessarily, because we don't close Baltic Heights or any other park per se. We just do that so that nobody's driving down that, ripping up that road.
Last summer, the season wasn't the gates open until December because of the temperatures and everything else.
when
I believe so.
I
It's
moved
open for a
to,
while.
I moved to town the 1st of October. And it was into November, it was still nice, and me and my kids were going down and
Yeah.
playing at the park, so.
Yeah,
I don't know the
usually we-
exact date it was closed, but it was open past the end of the camping season, because I didn't see any campers down there when we went down there, but my kids like to play on the bumpy slide park, as they call it. So, like the snow removal, that's gonna be part of it, but like I said, it's not like we're doing 10 miles of road, and it's simple, it's.
Priority, last thing of the day. when it-
Exactly,
Right.
yeah, it's not like it's gotta be the first thing we do or anything like that, and I made that clear to him when he was asking me about it. And like I said, he's not too worried about it, they all drive pickups, they're all, so. But it was just something that he approached me, and at first I kinda wasn't sure about it, but then the more I think about it, that'd be a pretty easy way for the city to make some, it takes nothing for us to make that income. If we could at least get 2 of them in there, that's more money just from 2 campers per month than the whole campground makes per month, I would assume. I don't know what the actual income figure is, but that would be.
There's
There's nothing you.
There's
I don't think
nothing.
there's any.
So my thoughts would be, from a financial standpoint, I think it's kind of a no-brainer.
Right.
But from a insurance side and that, I think if we do proceed with it, we would have to have them sign some sort of waiver.
A liability
Yep.
waiver or something. I don't think that would be.
Yeah,
But it's gonna be one of the issues, kind of like Deb said, is the gates are open, everybody's gonna drive down through there, so that's where. Yeah, but I guess in my mind, I guess I would play it by ear, and if things start to be more of a headache than what it's worth, we have a discussion about it.
And that was, like you said, that was something I mentioned to him also, was if it doesn't work out, if they can even get 2 months where they're not driving
Right.
400 miles a day, he's like, that would save us a ton. That's 2
When do they
months.
wanna start?
He wanted to start the day he came and talked to me a month ago.
I'm sure they're already, some cities are flexible and
Right.
whatever we can.
Right.
roll.
Yes, Dreyer.
Question, in regards to the campers, you know, they're gonna be plugged up to 50 amp the whole time. Do electric heat or propane heat? If they're plugged up to electric heat the whole time, your $600 income is going to go like that.
There, from what he said, most of them are propane heat.
Okay.
So that was something that I thought, I don't know how many exactly, all of them or how many of them, but he did mention that some of the 6 are on propane heat as well. And I'm sure after talking to him, if we can save him from driving that distance, he'd be willing to pay a little extra if, you know, winter time comes and hey, we're really cranking up the electric use out of the park. I'm sure if we talk to him, he'd be willing to chip in some.
Mine are centrally located to his work sites, is that
Very.
where he came into?
Yeah, we're like that center.
We're right
Here,
here.
cars.
Okay, because he's going up and over.
Correct.
and
Yes,
around. Because you know, like, I'm not
That's
saying we
what-
should just take it, I'm just saying that there's a lot of work sites.
No, and
you can always
give them.
But he mentioned that he talked to multiple places in Sioux Falls that are actually set up for permit, and they want $1,500 a month.
Oh my God, so charge him.
To me, like the number I gave him, I said 500, because that's more than, if you put a camper in that spot every day of the month, it's more than that site would make to begin. And when's the last time we ever had a camper that was there every day of the month? So, I mean, yeah, we could charge more, but we don't have sewer and water hookup,
Right.
so that's part of the reason
I'm
why.
set with you.
Yeah.
I'm so-
I wonder, does Dell's have sewer water?
No,
They don't either, okay. I'm just,
But they
paying
also
also,
don't have a big trail that has to be plowed if they go to.
Exactly.
Right off the road.
exactly.
So,
and I spoke with one of the maintenance people in Del Rapids, and I think the guy who approached me did also, and it just sounded like didn't want to have to deal with the headache of having someone there. I don't think they really had a problem with it, they just didn't want to put in the effort to deal with it.
so that is something to consider, because if Bell's has an easily accessible campground that has equal services, maybe there's something they're thinking that we're not, that you might want to check into, that they decided to pass on that, just from an educated decision standpoint.
I don't want to ask too many questions, quite frankly. Financially, it makes a lot of sense.
Financially it makes sense, but I mean, how about we,
Just not like, just talking to him, you know, I kind of mentioned how we don't want a rowdy bunch. And
Right.
the first thing he said is, I'm an OSHA inspector, I'm not rowdy. And he's like, if you have problems in your campground, we will deal with it. We're not afraid to tell people to knock it off. So to me, you know, this guy, like, they're here to keep people safe. So the thought of not having to babysit
So,
the riffraff in the campground, if we've got people that,
so is he asking for 6 spots? Right now, if we granted 6 spots, he would use.
he would use all 6 tomorrow if we could do it.
Use pay, turnkey, ready to go, 6 spots, so.
Yep.
I mean, for me, what I would.
Because he asked me, last time I talked to him was about a week and a half ago. He's like, if you can get it done, I will hook up my camper tonight and bring it and be here tomorrow. So the sooner we can get him, like I said, the first time he talked to me was about a month ago. And when he first approached me, he said, do you know anybody in the area? You know, he was looking everywhere. He called all over the place, and nobody had a permit set. So he's come and talked to me 2 or 3 times since then. And, I mean, I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to drive that far. He works a 12-hour job at a dairy. And then
20 hours extra a week.
Exactly, that you spend in your truck.
Yeah, it's $3 a gallon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, from a business standpoint, I think it's an absolute no-brainer. I don't think there's really any question on that. I mean, that's, if you have those 6 spots and we can say through November, let's readdress it. I think having the ability to say, hey, guys, this ain't working out, if something, if it's not what they portray it to be, we obviously, us having the ability to say, okay, you know, this ain't working, here's an end date, or even still having the ability to say, okay, you know, it's November, it's cold, have a threshold of where we can say, all right, we need to start paying some utilities down here because we're using too much electricity. If we could figure out what that threshold would be tough, but.
And are we talking about money up front? I mean, beginning of the month, I suppose there's gonna be some sort
I'm
of
sure,
contract.
talking to them,
with us.
I'm sure they'd be willing to do whatever we ask. Because they're, you know, because I mentioned like, hey, we don't have sewer and water. We weren't even done talking yet. He was on the phone and his boss is like, yep, we'll pay for it, whatever you need. So I don't think that'll be an issue. If we wanted money up front, like first of the month, pay for the whole month, I'm sure they would be
I
willing to do
don't
that.
think a deposit's a bad idea.
Right.
No different than.
Even do like a month deposit for it, whatever.
I mean, I think And I
And,
think the deposit per site is, not the worst idea in the world.
right,
Honestly, I think you should pass through the electricity to them.
Yeah,
Just pass it through, not.
Especially when
it's
it's the months,
Well, even now with air conditioning,
Because they're gonna run their heater all day.
Well, and AC is the same way.
AC is the same way, so I would want to see those numbers too.
If you want it to negate, I don't know how they're set up, my camper has propane on it. You could factor in a clause that says propane for heaters only, I mean, that would be
Right.
the easy way.
I'm
Or
wondering-
even who's gonna go out and regulate if they're running off propane on a heater?
well, even so, even if,
What's that?
I'm confused, wouldn't that be built into our daily fee? I'm not understanding
The elec-
electricity.
the electricity, it's accounted for in the $15.
Right, so if we're charging that daily plus another $150, we're saying we're worried about the electricity, then we're undercharging daily right now.
Well,
I
and
agree.
when we're talking
Wouldn't you agree?
winter months where it's cooler outside and they're running their furnace all day.
But I mean, they're
But I
like right
suppose is
now,
that any different than running your AC
no,
all day?
it's like right now, last Saturday or the Saturday before, in 5 minutes, I got 9 phone calls because there's no power in the campground. Well, you're camping, you don't need an air conditioner. I mean, that's just me, I can't pretend when I can't.
No, you do.
Family opposite.
Right, but I mean, you understand my point, so like right now, people are depending on their air conditioner, so
Right.
we're still using, I mean, essentially the same amount of electricity. Your air conditioner's gonna run just as much when it's 90 degrees as your heater will when it's 10 degrees. So,
If you're gonna write a contract with these guys, one thing I would suggest, having worked with cooling tower construction crews and knowing that, yes, they can be great guys and very safe, but they can also be very rowdy.
oh,
You're gonna wanna put in a clause that says we have right of approval to rescind this with no notice. In other words, if we tell you, get out, you're gone.
Yeah, they still have to abide by the ordinances, within the campground and.
And then you're gonna wanna make sure your law enforcement people know that they're gonna be there out here.
You also may want to do the agreement with the company and rather the individual employees, or just do it direct with the company.
see, and I don't know how it works if they all work, if all 6 of them work for the same company. I don't know if they're all 6 safety inspectors, or if one of them's a safety
That's all
inspector.
details that will be figured
So
out.
I think how we should go about it is have this gentleman come in and talk to Becca, and Becca can talk to the lawyer, and draw a contract based on exactly what he needs, exactly how many. And we can certainly revisit it as a council, and
We don't have, but I'm sure he wants to.
I'm sure he wants to get here as soon as possible. And maybe we can say we approve it based on a contract that
Can
we.
you do a tentative approval for the month?
That's what I was just gonna,
probably
I was
could.
just gonna say, I can't even go month to month.
Yeah, get them to come up here, I mean, hell, the spot's empty, fill it,
That's what I think, I don't know, I don't think we're looking.
and then worry about the money, worry about the winter.
It's $3,600 a month is what he's willing to pay if we give him 6 spots.
And so, like, they all have big campers, they live in these things, they're 50-foot,
Huge,
fifth wheel
yeah.
campers. So they're, the ones in the middle are gonna be the best. But we can,
The only thing I can think of too is if you're hogging those 6 spots for these 6 guys, or however many spots there are, if you're taking spots away from the general public that wants to go camp down there. Really the only downfall from, yeah, I know, that's what I'm getting at too. I mean, that's the only downfall, is not letting the general public get in those spots, but if they're paying the spots, I mean,
They're paying customers.
I would say,
Why do we care?
from a business standpoint, I would
Percent.
approve it contingent on some sort of write-up of a contract or agreement or something like that, so.
I second Travis's motion.
I'll make a motion to approve it contingent on agreement written up between both parties. Aaron, you second that?
yep, I second that.
Okay.
hey, thanks.
All right,
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, there we go. All right, so first reading of the ordinance 286 to amend discretionary formula. Do you want to explain what this happy thing is?
Sure.
So I don't have to read it all, and I'll understand what I'm reading anyway.
Okay. Baltic currently has in place what's called a discretionary formula, which is an incentive for economic development. So new commercial and industrial properties that have, for improvements to commercial and industrial properties that have a value of $30,000 or more, pay a tax at the rate of 0% in the first year, 20% in year 2, 40% in year 3, 60%, 80%, and 100% after the 5-year abatement or reduction in the tax. The last couple of years, the legislature has tweaked with some of the definitions and where it's located in some codified laws. If you look at the current ordinance, it references 2 or 3 statutes that no longer exist. So when you're referencing commercial industrial properties as defined under SDCL, it's 10.635.1, 10.635.1 doesn't exist. So this ordinance isn't intended to change anything,
It's just redirecting it to where
bringing
it's
it
supposed to.
current with what the state law now says. And so it covers commercial property, industrial property, or commercial residential, which is considered a multifamily unit of 4 units or more. Doesn't cover twin homes, but larger,
4.
4 plexes or beyond.
So we're not changing anything.
You're not changing
This is
anything,
just redirecting it
so
to
just
say
to make sure what you have in
where we
place
have in place
continues.
continues.
Yeah.
And that's the first reading.
And it's in your current ordinances, and we would just want to bring that correct based on changes made during this legislative session.
So that's an ordinance of the City of Baltic amending sections 33.16 and 33.17 of the City of Baltic ordinance to specify the real estate structures which qualify for discretionary formula. And it's ordinance number 286. All right, there's the first reading of that. Okay. Consideration of purchase of Banyan data modules. Basically, the way I understand this, ladies and gentlemen, is that there are some modules to make billing and all of that fun stuff that happens with finance easier, that has never been done. So we only have to put it in once and not 6 times or 3 times actually. I'm sarcastic, it's 3 times, but better efficiency in the office to be able to work smoother and faster if we have these.
So the first one is the third payments ACH, is that you can ACH my water bill every month?
Yeah. Yes. You can set it, you will be able to set it up to automatic pay.
And that will connect with the new website.
Yes, yeah.
And is there a fee for it?
No.
Unless
Even
it's
better.
through your bank.
Unless it's through your.
Unless
Oh,
your bank
yes.
charges you, we do not charge you.
So basically, trying to make it easier for everybody and get into the now.
How'd you hear about this, the thing, was this through the
When we had this finance officer group,
And then when we had the disconnect from the module that wasn't reading, remember, it wasn't importing our electronic payments into our system anymore, because that was a free module that's no longer available, so now you have to purchase it or you have to re-enter by hand.
Oh, okay.
yeah,
So
so,
that's why there was that disconnect for some of our electronic payments and ACH, because that module no longer exists. This will plug it in and then also allow you to set up recurring payments through your financial institution.
what's the cost? $3,075
Per year or one time?
one time. It's to buy the module.
There is a
Oh, wait,
There is an annual fee.
there is an annual fee.
$195.
Hard to find.
Yep, so it's $995 for the direct payment ACH, I'm assuming the setup.
You're right.
Annual support is
Oh,
$195.
$195, okay, there it is.
The GovPay module is $795, assuming it
The
gets,
sport, 95.
yep. So the way I looked at this was break it down on both a monthly, what this costs monthly versus physically what we spend in manpower per month. I don't know if you had an accurate number with that at all.
Yeah, well, it took us, 2 of us, 8 hours to put it in, so 16 hours.
Of what this will do.
Yes.
Yes.
How long has the tech on these modules been out there?
The module that we were using just expired.
The new ones that you want to get, how long is that tech now?
I do not know.
So you don't know if it's completely.
I know that other cities use it.
I would say it's been there for quite some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard her, but I asked her how she'd heard about it, there was other finance officers around that use
The
it,
reason I
so.
ask is because when you're going into new tech, you have to weigh, how long has it been out there? Is it brand new and it's still
Right.
like busting out? Or has it been out there so long and now it's needing?
I would-
updating?
It's my understanding that it's been out there for quite some time, and we had a trial, which is what the free one was, and the trial is no longer available. So we bled that until we couldn't use it anymore. So we basically, when it's, now it's a paying module and
The upgrade from what we had.
the upgrade from what we had, more or less.
Question. I heard a lot of numbers, and I couldn't keep up with it. So tell me, two answers. What's your total monthly cost for this new product, and what's the one-time charge?
It's an annual charge of $290.
Can we say that in hundreds or?
195.
$290.
$290 a year after this initial $3,075.
Okay,
So we won't get billed until next year, a year from whenever this gets set up for that $290.
well, the 3,000, a year later, we'll get the 290, and it's an annual charge?
Yep.
It's not a monthly charge?
No, it's a year.
So with
Thank
that, with that annual charge, it's not like you're being charged annually because they're putting out new updates and you're paying for the updates. It's just your maintenance.
It's our support.
I would imagine that it,
It's like a subscription on we use, like in my field, we use subscriptions on Scanfuel, you buy them every year. It keeps all your systems updated with all the current, whatever information. I would assume typically annual support is related to that, like a subscription to all of the modules and stuff that you have.
These prices are dirt cheap.
yeah,
You guys just don't do it nuts. It's dirt cheap.
Obviously, that's how I get.
That's why we're discussing.
That's why I wanted to compare it with physical manpower that we're doing
Right.
now versus.
Yes, sir.
One more question.
One more question, go for it.
Does this product have a projected end-of-life support?
I don't know if Banyan does.
I think that's what you want to know.
They've been around for 30 years.
They've been around for a long, long time.
That doesn't mean that the support in that product is going to be around for a long,
Well,
long
but
time.
the support is annual, so if they're no longer gonna have the support, then you're no longer gonna be paying your annual fee.
Right. And we would
So that's
have
what
to,
your annual amount is for support for the project.
Yes, and the upgrades and fixes and whatever else
Yes.
might be necessary.
Yeah.
yes,
This is kind of a municipal standard software.
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
very much
They've been
so.
around in municipal,
So if it goes down.
utility building for years and years.
Yeah, if it goes down, I'm pretty sure every city in the state of South Dakota, not probably everyone, would go down as well. A lot of them.
The only reason I raise that, for example, if you're on Microsoft 7.
Right.
And you have problems.
Right.
You're out of luck
Right.
because there's nowhere to go.
Right, you have to buy the upgrade.
Yeah, you're forced to do an upgrade.
Right.
And so that's why I asked the question.
and I'm sure at some point, maybe in another 10 years, 20 years, we'll have to buy another system or.
And that's business as usual.
Exactly,
That is exactly it.
exactly. Okay, so consideration, do we want to approve it? Do I have a first and a second?
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There we go. Approval of the consideration for purchase of the Banyan data models that we need, that we want.
Can I ask how soon that goes in? Nothing to impact.
I don't know, how soon will that go in?
24 hours from when they get the signed contract.
I just don't want to enter my water payments.
That's billing cycle. That's billing cycle for that.
72 hours.
Here's 14 days to get the website up. Okay, first thing on the agenda is the consideration of 4th Street paving proposal. Oh, here is the deal with this and why I'm bringing this to, or why Becca and I are bringing this to the table right now. Had a conversation with Mr. Hefty about what his plans were for 5th Street and how he was doing his stuff, and I looked at his proposal, and what he's paying for square footage for paving, all of that that's happening is half the price of what we would pay if we went out and got a proposal for either of these things. So my thought process was to put it in front of you guys to have a discussion that if we jumped on behind when they put those streets there, that we could pave 4th Street that has never been done, that I believe needs to be done. The rest of 5th Street down to Dave's driveway.
City limits.
To the city limits. So both of these would finish off what we've always,
What needs?
what we've always paid for. We've always gone and paid for them to put that water or oil or whatever it is down for dust control. And we can do that now too, and push this off if we really want to. But I'll tell you right now, based on what I was told by the engineer that talked to them about this, it would double. Both prices would double.
What's the cost?
Well, for 4th Street, because that's what we're talking about right now, it is $50,645.50. And I was also told that mobilization could get cheaper depending on how we want to address that big dip that goes in, how we want to take it out. If we want to put a culvert in it and then pave over the top of it, or if we want to try to, however, I'm not an engineer, I'm not about ready to talk in that section, but getting rid of that dip entirely and making sure it flows correct. Yes, sir.
Word of experience. That dip has been a blessing because it's a natural speed bump.
I would agree.
I'm not disagreeing.
Until that was put in, there will be people flying by my door at 60 miles an hour.
Right.
And I'm not exaggerating when I say that, and it wouldn't slow down until they got to the hill.
And we can leave the dip in there too. And then that would make this
I'm not saying
mobilization
anything
even
one way or the
cheaper.
other.
Yeah, we've got
I'm just saying.
options to look at for that.
But now if we're paving, how far are we paving again?
To the city limits,
To
south,
city limits, so it's like,
to the cornfield.
yeah, it's like, I forget what it is in feet.
There's a lift station down
Yeah,
there.
the lift station.
To the left, 2 blocks.
Yeah, it's about two blocks, 2 normal city blocks, I believe.
Okay, so you don't really, I mean, necessarily want to speed bump, that's where I'm going with this, is a speed bump,
We
2 blocks in.
we can have that,
gravel road.
we can have that conversation with Double H paving, if we want to keep that speed bump in it, if we want to put a culvert in it, and do it that way, or how we want to
It's
try.
more expensive, you don't just get rid of it. It's what's more, it's taking in all of
Right.
Union Avenue and water. down
He
there.
didn't say get rid of it, it's just a different way of doing it besides a culvert.
But I wonder how mobilization would go down versus the cost of the project going up, because you're gonna have to put in a box culvert or something underneath.
There's, so
That's
how it's set up right now, there's already a culvert under that dip. There's an inlet
That's
in
right
the corner of
Yeah.
it, it'd be the southeast corner of that intersection.
Okay.
There is a grate and inlet, and so the water goes down. I think the point of the dip, between being a natural speed bump, or like a speed bump in place, it's like an overflow, where if the grate gets plugged, it's got an easy bypass to go continue to the west.
And
So there is already a culvert.
My relatives live right on the corner there, John. And yeah, just being around there all the time, even with that dip there, you see a car go by and you're like, this isn't.
You're gonna make it.
Yeah, and you can just see them
well,
smack it every time, so I don't laugh every time it happens. But yeah, I don't think.
the mobilization has that box culvert into this price tag. But like I said, it can change based on if we choose something different.
Sure.
What's your other amount? That's for both streets?
No, that's just for one, one at a time.
What's the other one?
Fifth Street
That one's a
is
big one.
98,316.
And that would be from,
Catherine Drive.
Catherine Drive to the end of city limits.
A little bit.
yeah, it'd be Catherine,
That's
so
what I was thinking.
quarter mile.
First row to finish it.
I'm not an issue with First Street, but I have something to say on Fifth Street.
Okay. We got,
Well, I don't know if we're done
no,
with
we're
First
not done
Street.
with Fourth Street.
But, I mean, we can discuss it more if we want to.
It might be beneficial to talk about this since we're discussing. Yeah, what do you got?
I brought notes so I can be succinct. So I'm here to present 3 items to consider regarding the paving of Fifth Street. Common development practices, precedents, and long-term taxpayer impact. Okay, so the first is common development practices. This road on Fifth Street is being paved for a very primary purpose, and that is for a new development to have access to existing paved roads in the city of Baltimore, right? And so one could reason that the new homeowners could bear the cost of that roadway because it is those same homeowners that are bearing the benefit of that roadway. It's a common practice in commercial development for the developer to be responsible for the infrastructure and the connecting roadways of these developments.
He is responsible for connecting it to what we already have. This is from Catherine Drive, which is his first driveway, to finish out to city limit. So he's already going to pay for that Catherine Drive to where the school is, where Fifth Street, what is Valley View, where that all connects.
I guess my point is I don't think we should have to pay for it at all because he's the incumbent developer. I understand. And so I guess what I'm trying to make a point as is that case in point in Del Rapids, when the addition south of 15th Street was created, you know, where they had the road to the school and it's between the graveyard and that kind of thing, they made that whole neighborhood there. Chris was responsible for paving that 15th Street. And so it was built into the cost of the development. And so I can't quote directly, but I do believe that there's other developments in Sioux Falls that weren't necessarily completely conjoined, and that the developers pays for that connecting road, and they built it into the cost of development, which is essentially then passed on to the homeowner. And so, so that's one thing to think about is common development practices, okay? Second is precedence. Right now, as I understand it, there is no precedence in Baltic that I'm aware of for existing homeowners and existing taxpayers to absorb the roadway paving costs when you add or annex a new development. So you guys are in new territory here to decide which direction you want to go. I had a conversation with John, and he said he talked to Dale Erickson, and he said the last time he can even remember that the cost of paving a road was passed on to citizens is when we actually paved all the roads in Baltic.
Wrong.
And I'm giving you, I don't tell you what happened.
Oh, okay.
I'm giving you the information that I have. I'm not
Sure.
saying it's correct, I'm just saying with the information that I have, okay? I do understand that, and this is not on my notes, but I understand there's something with Fifth Street, that there was something paved there, but it was also my understanding it wasn't paid by the taxpayers. So Tracy, if you have more information, I'm happy to discuss it. I'm giving you mine. And so, on a quick side note too, I also seem to recall that in not just one, but in several conversations, we were, as taxpayers, were assured that this development would not be at our expense or create any disparate impact to us as taxpayers, and that this would be net positive to the city as a whole, and it wouldn't cost us anything to bring this neighborhood in. And now this, $98,000. So this leads me to my third and final point, which is long-term taxpayer impact. Making this decision to simply roll this new stretch of road into the new maintenance program, it really isn't that simple, because you as council, if you choose to decide, you're basically setting a precedence. You're setting a precedence that all annexed roadways to future developments will become the burden of we, the taxpayers, when it is common development practice for it to be on the onus of the developer. So it's up to you as council as to how we address expansion of roadways. And who pays for that? Is it the developer who basically passes it on to the new homeowners that are going to benefit from that roadway anyway? Or are you going to make the decision to make us, existing taxpayers, to pay and bear the burden of that economic development, not only today, but in the future?
Tracy, what do you have?
Fifth
I
Street,
gave you my notes.
Fifth Street,
Because I said a lot.
when I moved here in 2006, Fifth Street was not done. It was gravel. And, the city paid for that to be paved. Fifth Street was paved from Lovely to the city limits. And the reason they ended up paving it is because that's when the bridge went out. And the city ended up renting the 100% cost of that Fifth Street from Lovely to the end of the road. It just didn't happen. To the north, right, sorry, to the north, yes. It just didn't happen when they were, before everything was done there.
Tracy, you're saying there wasn't a grant that paid for that?
Nope.
So what was the distance of that one?
It was from Lovely to Cemetery, and it's, that's what, almost 2 miles?
So that was all gravel.
A mile?
No, mile.
Okay, and so I forget what was the reason for that, because the bridge was out?
When the,
That was what pushed it up, but it was going
Because of
to,
the annexation.
no, it was already annexed in, and that, because that is Baltic Heights. Baltic Heights was annexed in and they never oiled.
So it's a completely separate situation. This is where we made a conscious decision, literally in the last couple of months, to bring in this neighborhood, knowing full well there was going to be a paved road between where the city is paved and it exists to connect the development. And so we're making a conscious decision to absorb that expense as a city for a developer to come in when they could easily absorb that expense and pass it on to the.
Deb, did you know that he was paving? I'm wondering if your thoughts have changed at all now, knowing that he's finishing from that.
I don't
drive
think we should have to pay any of it, to be honest.
So, well,
Yes, he's
well-
the developer.
to your point, it's the same as what happened in Baltic Heights, it's just not as fast. because when Baltic Heights was put in, then, to your point,
They waited.
they should have paid for it at that time.
Right.
But they didn't pay for it then, that developer didn't pay for it. So it's the same thing, it's just the time frame is more spread out in Baltic Heights, and Baltic Heights was spread out by 10 years.
But then I get it where it is
So here's the
different
very good question though,
because.
how many households do we have in Buffalo? What, 800? 800 houses?
400.
400, what's 78,000 divided by 400 and what? Can someone do the math on that?
And then that was my other point, and I'm not saying this should change a whole lot, but it's interesting. We're not talking about raising that dollar that you're finding right now in order to pay for it. That is using the structure that we're under right now to pay for that road. Does that make sense?
Money towards one thing is money away from the.
I understand that, and that's why I said it doesn't fix the whole issue, but I was just gonna say it's not. It isn't that we're saying, here you go, here's more taxes. Does that make sense?
Here's my.
And actually that expense gets spread out as you build more homes, correct? Same as a school.
But it's
We
not
have to school-
precedence, so somebody else buys more land down the road, or someone else buys more land down the road. Now you've set up a situation that when a developer comes in and there isn't pavement between that development
that's-
and what we have paved, we are now locked and loaded to
Now,
have to pay.
but that's what I'm asking you, because we are not paying for that in this instance. Hefty's is.
He's paying the 98,000.
No,
paying the 98?
we're in between.
We're in between. I believe. What
Explain,
does that mean?
explain what Hefty is paying.
Hefty is paving from where the school corner is, and you've seen it all torn up, because of Fifth Street was
So he's
closed.
essentially fixing what.
He's fixing
destroyed.
what he just destroyed. And then he is taking care of all the way to the first driveway, which is called.
So why can't he do it all then?
Because
Why would
I guess I
he do
shouldn't
it
answer
all?
that for him, so I guess I won't.
The question I have is this.
But hold on, I'm sorry, Deb, the reason why I was bringing that up is that I'm merely just trying to get back straight here. You are saying we're setting a precedence to connect what he's got going on into our infrastructure to a paved road, but that's not what we are currently paying for, so I'm confused on what we're.
What are we paying?
That's what this 98,000 is to
I thought she said it's going from asphalt to Catherine.
No, this is from Catherine.
No, this is from Catherine to city limits.
Exactly, so we are not paying, we're paying from Catherine to city limits.
Right.
He is paying the expense from his development to asphalt. So we are not setting that precedent.
His property.
Yes.
To his
He's
property.
saying, he is,
Well, to Baldwin property.
Brian is paid to pay from the first access road into that development to the school. So you can
why
get
would
from,
he pay for all of it? That's why
because
we're doing
the
separate.
rest of it isn't required to get into his development.
Right.
The rest of it is simply to get to the edge of city limits.
Yes,
Project.
yes.
You'd have to just lease.
But either way, it's got,
Yes.
it's in city
Why
limits.
did you say precedent?
Yes, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say,
That's okay. But
We
can't
don't-
approve them both right now. No.
this, if we do not decide to do this, this does not prevent Hefty from doing what he needs to do.
They can do it.
This is a city thing. The only reason why it's brought to the table right now is because we would get a discount if we go at the same time as Hefty does. And we do not have to do this right now. Now, what you're saying is though, if this is something that needs to happen, then he should pay for it. But can we?
He doesn't have to, we can't.
Would
force
you
him
even
to.
be considering paving that road if Hefty was not developing that land?
Yes,
That's
because
the question
I believe so, because we did Fifth Street to the city, and we're looking at Fourth Street.
There's houses on Fifth Street, I mean,
There will be houses there.
there will be
In the development.
Right, but again, this price tag, I know, maybe I didn't make myself clear. The reason I'm even bringing this to the table is the price tag he gets is half the price of what we would do if we waited
That's the
next
carrot.
year.
Here's the stick.
Okay.
The stick is you're setting a precedent. You as a board, not 2 months ago, sat here when Mr. Sinding came in and asked about why it wasn't paved out his way, said, we have our gravel roads in rotation. And we do them in rotation, and guess what? Your turn never came up.
That's right.
Okay, so why all of a sudden are they jumping the line? And we're going to immediately do it before they're even there.
and do it at my expense.
Right.
You as a board need to be aware that you have a number of senior people living in this community that are on a fixed income. And just because Mr. Hefty decides he wants to build a development there, it does not increase my income. But if it increases my tax burden, my concern is if you keep the purse open, you're going to tax a number of your senior people right out of this town. And I have lived here since 1976. I have contributed to this community. I do not need to be taxed out because I wants, and new developments that come in that aren't carrying their own water. That's the carrot, that's the stick. You need to watch both.
We're not making a decision right now, we're considering this. That's what this is all about, it's new business considering this. And we're taking all considerations. We're not making, I don't want you to think that we're making this decision right now, because we're not.
But it's not, nobody's saying this has to happen, this does not have to happen. What Hefty's doing is gonna continue. It's gonna be gravel then, just like 4th Street, just like 5th Street was behind my house. So the only reason why Tracy's bringing this to the table right now is to say, we can get it at 50% off. But it does not have to happen.
It doesn't have to happen.
And the other thing is, you need to consider, while he is paving now, he's gonna be paving in the future. Because not only has he bought the land that he has there, he has bought the Black Angus Farm. He intends to develop all the way out.
So you're fine with the tax burden then, is what you're saying?
No, he should do it then too, because he should be building.
Okay, well, I'm just saying you can't have that argument and that argument play the same.
Yeah, actually you can, because if he's gonna develop, if we only pave to that area and then he makes another driveway down the same road, then he creates a
Okay, yeah.
connection.
Okay,
So
so I just don't understand.
That makes sense to me.
Can I say something? That's a good point, I just gotta really disagree.
So, let's just straighten this out here, forget about Fifth Street, take it off the table. What we're really looking at then is, do we pay 50 grand now, while we have an opportunity, to pay 4th Street and take care of that?
100% yes, because
Or-
it's 24 years overdue.
Or do we wait, because it's a hefty thing, and he's already in, and so now this jumps the line, and we pay 100, we pay
So are you
100,000.
saying we can't do 4th Street if we don't do the rest of the?
I'm not saying that, but what,
We may not
whatever,
have
just a minute,
feedback off of
just a
that.
minute, just a minute.
Why not?
What I'm getting at is, we don't have to do one and only one, we can split, we can do whatever. I'm right there with you, yeah, let's get 4th Street taken care of, worry about 5th Street later, that's my opinion. But we're tabling it, and the only reason why we're tabling it is because the offer of the dollars make the best sense of using city money.
And
I
mobilization.
get where you're getting at with what your guys' complaints and your thoughts and processes on Fifth Street, I get that, and it will be discussed. But we can't throw everything out when there is still a good offer here on the table to do for it.
Well, and Aaron, I don't think anyone has said they don't want to do 4th Street.
I know,
think
but
everybody
it's-
agrees that 4th Street is really, really.
Long overdue.
I get that,
Overdue.
but I don't want it to be, well, Brian Hefty did this, Brian Hefty did that, he's,
I don't care if it's Ryan Hefty or.
I don't either, I really don't, but what I'm getting tired of hearing is there's a lot of blame going towards Brian Hefty because he's doing this, that there's a lot of complaining about it, and personally, I guess at the end of the day, this is a good offer for 50 grand to get it done
May I ask one question?
on 4th Street.
I
Yes,
hear what you're saying.
what's your
Who
question?
developed 4th Street beyond the speed bump?
Who did the circle?
Oh.
No, you're gonna take 4th Street and go down
The two houses,
those two houses. Who did that?
I don't.
Wasn't that Baltic Lumber? I'm asking.
How come they didn't have to pave the street then?
What's the question? I don't understand the question.
Who developed the two houses south of the speed bump?
There was no development. It was individually owned and.
They were built.
By hook or crook through a good old buddy system, they convinced City Hall to allow them to be built.
Okay,
So there was no structure at all.
So Did we annex that in then? I'm not
It
sure.
was in the city
It
limits.
was already in the city limits.
The city limits go from the fence line
Right.
south of Nicole Anderson's lot,
Sure.
straight imaginary line all the way to the river. Because the other side, the farm ground,
Right.
is in the city limits also.
Why did they have to develop, put in the paving then?
What?
How come they didn't have to pave it then?
No. Seriously, after everything you've
That's
seen.
before-
No, I'm asking the question. The developer's supposed to do it. When they got that developed,
It wasn't a development.
Yeah.
Is what
It was a man building a house.
I'm sorry, I think we need to move on. What I'm saying is that if you follow the laws of the planning and zoning book, it should have been done at that time based upon the, and the individual should have paid it. So just what you said, the good old boy system was in play, and now we're trying to fix it. We have an opportunity to pay 50 cents on the dollar to do it. That's what we're trying to do. It's not gonna affect tax dollars. We're trying to make it better. This is a good thing all the way around.
So then let me ask one more question, and just, Aaron, so you know, this has nothing to do with Happy, I feel like this with any development, in all honesty. So if he is just gonna pave up to his entryway, we're just paving a gravel road just to get city limits, just to have pavements.
And get 50
So
cents.
it's really a road to gravel, right? There's no reason, there's no other inlet to that piece you guys wanna pave, right?
Well, it was just a change, this goes back to 50 cents on the dollar.
The bike path, snow removal, and we have for years, and John can attest to this, we have for years put down I don't know if it's an oil or whatever that thing is,
Just a big.
the dusted things on Fifth and Fourth for all of those houses that back up to Fifth.
And what's the cost to maintain that strip of road now?
We don't maintain it right well.
We
We haven't ever, the township maintained it.
pays the township to blade it
When they blade them.
the
So
existing.
what are we paying to do, take care of it now?
Yeah.
I wanna say
Pay taxes.
I don't-
it's like between 80 and 120 bucks per month, if I recall.
Month.
Just by looking, I'm just trying to remember disbursements and what Spurs Township charges, but.
I would have to look it up.
And the water's about $4,000 a year.
Okay. So what is our slice of this $98,000 pie? How much are we really on the hook for?
And
The $98,000.
So we're on the hook for 98,000.
Right.
How many houses do we have again?
It comes out to $200, $225.
How is, help me with the math on that, because I'm not doing the same math in my head.
So $245, so $98,000 divided by 400 houses is $245 per house. But
Per
you-
year.
Per,
No.
One time.
that's one time,
One time.
per house. But mind you, this does not affect your taxes. Your taxes aren't going up $245 this year.
Said no one ever.
They're not.
Well, I can't control taxes, that would be the county that controls taxes, we don't control taxes. Yes, sir.
And we're gonna get money.
Yeah. Taxes you pay years.
That's right, and when you deplete that pot, you're gonna come back to me as a taxpayer and say, you know what, we've depleted the money we had, we need more money and up go your taxes.
We can't do that.
We can't do that.
That's the county that does
The
that.
county changes your
The
taxes, the
city
city
does not set
cannot
your
do that.
taxes.
That would be a whole other subject of educating us.
Yeah, it
about
would be.
taxes.
Yes, John.
They're limited by the state law, or they can raise.
You're having this discussion about these streets. Is there an answer that has to be provided by a certain time?
We will lose this bid if we don't make a decision by August.
Okay,
August
so,
fifth,
Although it
or
does say
something.
on here 10 days.
Well, it says 10 days, but we can make the decision on our August meeting, after that, it goes away.
okay.
I would be inclined, I would be inclined to see and compare to other developments. I think that's a good point that I never thought of, just to see how other developments have handled that situation. But I mean, like these guys have always said, this, if we are stuck for this, there's no better time to do this than right now, when you're paying 50% of what you may have to end up paying eventually. But I think doing some research on that is never a bad idea. But there is no better time, if we're gonna get stuck with this, there is no better time to do it than right now.
But are we really stuck with it? If it's just a gravel road that goes to nowhere?
I know what the last gravel roads I went to nowhere was like in this town, and it was an absolute pain in the ass every time it got brought up. It was washboarded nonstop, with that much more traffic when you do development. You can ask everybody on the U what they're gonna think when they get dust blowing in their backyards all the time. It's just a snowball effect, and I know, I was young what was it, Fifth?
Lovely to, yeah.
I was young when I was still in school at that point, but I remember everybody complaining about it, and it was always washboarded, it was an absolute disaster, so this, for me, I do wanna see that road paved. The expense is the part we need to iron out, but to me, that road has to be paved. That is an absolute priority.
Well, you guys also from a futuristic standpoint, because Baltic is going to expand, it's just going to happen. So I would at least consider, because obviously you guys get to do what you want, and I encourage you to check with your constituents to see if they share your opinion, so you're representing your areas wholly. If you have a developer that is going to develop on the other side of Simmonsville's house, it's quite possible you could negotiate for them to have to pay that piece and we never have to. So it's one,
So
on one side, we get a deal now, we get 50 cents on the dollar.
I know what you're saying.
You know what, we may never have to pay for this at all if we play our cards right.
that's the direction of development.
Zach, you got a question, Steve?
I just wanted to get in, I know we wanna move on, I admit, I have a vested interest in Fifth Street getting paved. It looks like a road to nowhere, it's a road to very little, I'll give you that. But I have the property on the other side of that road, and I go back there a lot, and I would like to see it paved. My personal thought is if it's in city limits, we should have paved it. Fourth Street should have been done a long time ago, I don't know. But to that extent, if I put a house out there, you know, we own, I mean, I know we annexed this road, but we own half of that road up to this point, and it was never done. And again, I understand that those taxes could go to much better things than paving the road in my backyard. But I personally feel if it's in town, it should be done. I don't really honestly care how it happens.
So if that's the case, have Hefty pay for his side that backs up to his property and have the property owners who want it done pay for their side.
That's not right.
I know, but I just think, because Hefty should have to at least pay his side that backs up to his property, and let the city pay the other side to make it right for the homeowners that have had to do it, and so that way we're not splitting it even. He has to own his part of the property, and then we own our part of the property, and I could actually get on board with that, because I don't mean to insult that your road is a road to nowhere, but I also am not okay setting precedents with a developer expecting us to pave their roads, especially when it backs up to their property. Not okay.
You know, he's gonna use it as a selling point that it's paved.
Yeah,
I just want to say one thing too, on one of those from 4th Street and 5th Street, since I started the maintenance job, that's a rough on the vehicles. So we use to plow that, the pickup truck we use to plow that area. We had the old truck that was rough on, the new truck it's rough on, we're cleaning that gravel out.
Yeah, it ends up in my yard.
Yeah.
So, actually, that was actually Kelly when we came out there. I tried to fix that one time. I know you 4th Street, then they came back again.
Okay, so do we want to, if you get in the weeds on the situation in Bell Rapids where they did develop that whole stretch of land with an existing road, it wasn't gravel that time, but it wasn't a really nice road either. So what the city and Chris did to make it, they were in a much different situation because it was non-city land on one side of the road and city land on the other side of the road. So what the city and Chris did is Chris absolutely took care of the part that was his land. And then the city actually took care of that because they couldn't get the farmer to do it because he's farmers like that. And so the city took half that land and took the other half, so then the road was full. So what I'm saying is instead of just accepting to do all of it because it's 50 cents on the dollar, be mindful about what you're doing because you are setting precedents. You are. So, and you have a future to hold as a council for our city.
One thing to keep in mind too, like you said, where Chris paid for one side and the city paid for the other. This is essentially Brian paying for half of it because it's half price. So this is essentially Brian paying for half of it and giving us a half price discount. The city
Well,
pays.
why not pay a quarter of it because he can pay half of the half?
Because he's already giving us half price.
He's giving you the discount he's getting already, he's not sacrificing that.
Right, but what are we gonna give up by taking?
Why do we have to give up anything? He's joining our city. If you're looking, we don't have to negotiate. We have the ability to make responsible choices for our taxpayers and be mindful of how we're spending our money. And so if there is a reasonable way to do it that benefits the taxpayers, that's what the council should do all day long. That's how we do it.
Thank you, that was very valid. I did like what you're trying.
Do we,
4th Street.
4th Street, do we want to table it? Do we want to accept it? Do we want to decline it?
I would make a
So-
motion to approve 4th Street project.
question real quick with that one. This price is no matter what. So if we don't get fed, we still get those.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I second that.
Carried. All in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Uh,
Okay. Consideration of Fourth Street. Okay.
24 years.
Okay, consideration of Fifth Street. Do we want to table it? Do we want to approve it? Do we want to decline it?
I want to table it.
Okay,
I'll second that.
second that, all right. Aaron. And Brendan. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? That is tabled. Okay. Consideration of surplus and sale equipment?
Payloader.
The payloader, is that you?
Surplus of
Oh,
payloader.
2 in 1?
Yeah.
Not fair.
What, now I gotta come back?
Yes. Consideration of surplus and sale of equipment.
All right, so when I started here, first week of April, I believe it was, first week of April, the first thing that caught my eye, I'm a mechanic, I'm a diesel mechanic, I went to school for it, like turning wrenches. I love equipment, that kind of stuff. So the first thing that caught my eye was, hey, we've got a 10-year-old payloader that is in mint condition. So I know a lot of people in construction, in earth moving, you know, like guys from Double H and, you know, all these earth moving companies. So the first thing that clicked into my mind was, hey, we've got a diamond in the rough, like a 10-year-old payloader with no hours on it, essentially no hours. It's got 2,250 hours or something like that. No hours for being 10 years old. So I got a hold of a salesman from RDO Equipment in Sioux Falls, which is a John Deere construction dealership, and said, hey, can you put us together a price, what a trade-in would be if we traded our machine in today towards a new. And he came back to us with a price, I believe it was $88,500. So I took that and went to the state of Minnesota's bids, because all of theirs, the state of Minnesota does it really easy to find where all of their equipment contracts, all of their prices for anything they bid out is super easy to find online. South Dakota, you can find it, but it takes forever. So I spec'd out like an entry-level price for the machine that we would buy to replace that one. And the entry price is $120,000, give or take. I mean, that was last year's price, so I think the bid was due in August of this year. So my thought being, that machine is right on the border of going backwards on trade-in value. We're gonna start losing, you know, obviously it depreciates every year, but there's a threshold where the curve gradually, I mean, it severely drops off. And me, with being a mechanic and knowing equipment values, we're right on the edge of that. So my thought was, if we can either trade it off for the 88,000, otherwise the next thought that crossed my mind was, if we can list it and do sealed bids, kind of like we did for the commercial one. If we can advertise it and get it out there sell it, you know, if we can do sealed bids and get like a farmer or a dairy or a construction company to bid on it, I think there's a very, very good possibility we could get a lot closer to $120,000 on a sealed bid. You know, just, hey, this is what we got. I think that would be a good opportunity if we made sure to put in there, you know, make it so that if it's possible to be able to reject all offers, if none of them.
Certain dollar amount.
Right, so if we set the dollar amount at 88,500, whatever the trade-in value was, if we don't get over that, then you just reject them all.
So you're wanting us to consider the surplus, the payloader,
Correct.
and put it up for a steel bid
Correct.
at 88,500.
As like the minimum, essentially like.
Essentially, yeah.
Another route you can do is there's auction companies now, online auctions.
So, and that was.
Purple Wave.
Yep.
Right, and so, Big Iron's a big one, and one thing that, you know, I thought of.
We still have to advertise locally and
Right.
as to when the bidding is available for the.
Yeah, and the only bad thing about that is then that profit that we would get above the 88,000, then a percentage, you know, we obviously have to pay a percentage of the machine price to the auction.
I think they usually try to charge a buyer surplus.
Do they? Okay. So that would be something to look into too, either route, but I think it would be at least worth our time to consider selling it privately
So
per
let me
se.
ask the finance officer, is that paid for? I'm joking. I don't know if it's paid for.
It should be.
It should be.
It's 10 years old.
Do you know if it's paid
Yeah,
for?
so the story with
What
payloaders,
is
we used to trade them, they were again on a rotation, so
Right.
we would trade them out. So when Ken brought this up a few years ago, and it had such low hours on it, we chose to keep it
Instead of
and
doing a
put an
rotation.
extended warranty on it, because Ken thought, again, what you said, it's a diamond in the rough, it truly is. Because you guys take good care of it, so that's why we kept it, that's why instead of trading it off to keep that monthly payment going every year like we did with that was how we bought the street sweeper. Because that was paid off, so then that's when we chose to buy the street sweeper, because the money we were paying every month for that, we used to have our own street sweeper.
And I could be wrong, I'd have to look for sure, I believe the extended warranty that was purchased, I think it expires this year.
Yes.
Is it this year for sure? Okay, so.
Our first one.
Question.
We did that too, as well.
What is that used for? Snow removal?
Snow removal, fallen trees,
Okay, so
tree
then,
repair.
so we would sell it, but then we'd need to get a new one,
So then we would use the money we got from selling this one to purchase, put that towards purchasing it.
and a new one is,
Updating.
how?
$120.
That's like the base
You can
price.
still sell this one for 120?
That's what we're hoping.
That's
If
possible.
RDO, if the dealership is willing to give us 88,500, they're gonna put it on the lot for 115 all day long.
So why wouldn't we keep it if it's
Exactly.
worth that much, if we're gonna
It's
turn
gonna
on
start,
this?
it's gonna start depreciating.
Because it's gonna do, if we keep it another 5 years, it might only be worth 40,000.
But if we go buy a new or another one, is it brand new at 120?
Yeah.
Yes, that's brand new off the lot. I mean, that's like off the
Okay.
factory. And there's options. That's not a set price. Like that's the base machine price. That essentially buys you a machine. Like that's the first option. If you buy a car, a brand new car, there's 800 pages of options. That gets you the first line. That gets you the machine itself.
So what's the cost for a comparative one with the options that we've got on the 10-year-old?
I haven't priced out, I didn't go through and price out comparative to what we have. I just got the base price for the machine.
And the other question I have is with all the shortages of different things, is there this kind of equipment available? Or if we were to sell ours, we would do it out until we can get it?
When I talked to the gentleman from RDO, there was one with, it was purchased, the state of North Dakota ordered each, and they ended up backing out with financial, it was a small town in North Dakota, and they backed out of purchase. So it's essentially the same machine as we have now, just newer, Hopi wood rock, just sitting on the lot. If we spec it out with a weird option or something that has to be built, we're looking at 4 to 5 years. So that's something that we do need to consider, and that would be, if we accept an offer, then it would be very wise of us to go through and price the exact machine we want and see what kind of lead time that would be, versus if we can talk to dealerships around and find something that's close enough that we could get right now today.
So is the 120 for the North Dakota's reject?
No, that was just, the 120 is the base price of the state of Minnesota bid. So, and that
Because I
was,
would think if North Dakota's sitting with one that somebody ordered that they didn't take, they're probably going to sell that at a discount.
well, it would be similar in price, I'm sure, to what the state of Minnesota bid. So,
I think what you're trying to say is even if we end up spending 10 to 20,000, we get it.
We're getting a new one.
10 years.
Right, so that's my thought on it. If we can, I mean, what we have now is essentially as pre-emissions as you can get. Like, it's a tier 3 engine, so it doesn't take that. So I love it, because it's mechanically simpler than what we're gonna get. But I would hate to see us keep it another 5 years, and then if we can do it this year and it only costs us, say it costs us $30,000 this year. If we keep our machine another 5 years, and the value of it cuts in half, then it's gonna cost us $90,000 to get into a newer machine.
Miles, I can't tell you enough how appreciative I am that you forward thinking like this, because this is just refreshing.
This is not, yeah, this is.
And I'm not at all saying we have to do it, like the machine we
No,
have
well,
now
that's,
is great.
yes, to follow my point, I think, really glad you put it on the radar. When you think about it, it sounds like you got research, so I would like to table the consideration of surplus.
Yes.
facilities.
So,
and do some research.
I've got a first to table it, do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Thanks, Miles.
Thanks.
Opposed, thank you, Miles.
That would be an upgrade, it's not surplus. To me, surplus is something.
Once it's tabled, that's supposed to be in the discussion of that topic.
Road waters.
Consideration for rural.
So the,
Yep, Tom.
Minnehaha Community Water has
drafted an agreement that they've entered into with Garrettson, Brandon, Sioux Falls. If there's one other community. I can't remember if Del Rapids has done it or not. Anyway, the issue of service territories with rural water cooperatives needs to be addressed at some point because their state law sets out what your territories are. When you annex property, then there's, it could be in the rural waters service territory, in the city service territory, and there's rules for compensation back and forth, depending upon the depth that the rural water system carries. And so I talked to their general manager today, and then also to Pat Carey about putting together some maps where there's projected future growth for Baltic, so that if that does come, everybody's aware of whose service territory it would be, and so you can do your planning based on that. It could be require some compensation to the rural water system to acquire that territory and the customers that might be there. They drafted an agreement, and I told them we would start the discussion tonight about that, and then hopefully by your August meeting, probably have an agreement for you to consider for entering into with them. And it really just deals with the service territories and compensation for facilities that.
So we don't need to make a decision tonight?
No,
Okay. You're just bringing it to our attention that this is something
That
we have
just
to
had
do
it
with
up, gotten it off to me, and we're
Okay.
working on getting that put together, so.
Awesome.
Okay, that's awesome, great. Okay, next item is P&Z reorganization. I, as mayor, have the choice to appoint anyone, so what I'm going to do after talking with Carrie and Aaron, I am removing Carrie from P&Z, and I am adding Aaron to P&Z. So that will affect you. Carrie will now be not on your board, P&Z, and Aaron. No, you cannot. Do I have to have a person second for that? I don't think so, because that's my appointment.
Your appointment.
So, no, okay.
Does Aaron have a city email?
He does.
Yes, he does.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll get you caught up.
All right.
Does Aaron check said city?
Yes, he does. Okay, claims payable, you did those, Travis?
Good,
And they were good. I need a first and a second to approve them,
I'll make a motion.
and a second. Is that Brendan? Yep. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. That is Travis and Brendan. Okay, executive session. I need a,
Make a motion to enter executive session for matters relating to personnel
and a second, and legal
and
counsel.
consulting with legal counsel or in communications with legal counsel about proposed pending litigation with connect directed matters.
And a second? Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There we go.